Welcome to the Children's Book Author Podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor Page. If you write for children, or it's always been your dream to, you're in the right place. As the children's book author, I'm on a quest to discover everything there is about writing, publishing, and marketing children's books, as well as how to supercharge my creativity, skyrocket my productivity, and absolutely everything else there is to know about how to be the best, so you can be too. Join me as I interview fabulous guests and become the children's book author. Page here with another episode of the Children's Book Author Podcast. Whoever did think up that very long name? Oops, I think that was me. But, I was trying to go for something really obvious rather than giving it a clicky cute name like I would normally give something. And now every time I have to say it, I'm like, gosh, that is a lot of words all in a row. A new episode today, and I'm so excited to share with you an episode all about the magical word publicity or marketing, things that all authors are supposed to be doing and hopefully are doing. And I am amongst the biggest culprits of sometimes just putting it at the bottom of my to-do list because, there's something new to write. There's something better to make. And I'm a maker, so I love making things. But sometimes talking about the things that I make or trying to promote them or trying to market them in new and unique ways can get boring. I'm not sure of what to do. So all the things that I asked today's guests, Alysson and Laurie, who are the winning team behind Expound Publicity. And oh my gosh, they have come up with such great answers to all my questions about how to market better. And you do have homework after this podcast. I have homework after this podcast. I have to sit down and you have to sit down and write and think about all the different themes and values that your book or books might cover, because there's so many opportunities to plug your book into places. But if you don't sit down and do this bit of homework, you, like me, will be missing out. So today's interview is fantastic for all of that. We jump right in, and I guess it's a good reminder we can't just keep making things. We do have to get out and actually promote them. But if you are in the throes of making something, ideally a book, because that's what this podcast is all about. Welcome. I have written up, and it took me a little while, but I put all the best things that I've learned over the years and discovered myself about writing scenes in books that are doing something. And that sounds like a weird thing to say, like a scene that's doing something, but you would be amazed by the amount of scenes or even entire books that people write where not much is happening, or that scene or that chapter isn't necessarily pulling its weight in the overall scheme of a book. And even in a picture book, a particular page may not be pulling its weight in the overall scheme of the picture book. And so I've created a little booklet, and even the best part of it really is that there's this amazing checklist about what every scene must absolutely include, what every scene you can put in to give it, even better appeal. And then you can really elevate it. So kind of 3 categories of things that you can put into every scene you write to make sure that that scene in your book or that chapter, I tend to write a chapter as a scene, but that's just me, that it is pulling its weight and that it's actually making your book super exciting. It's moving your story forward, and so important, it's hooking your reader so that they want to flip the page and keep reading. So grab it. It is a freebie, no strings attached, other than you will be added to my newsletter. but I don't really send out newsletters. I just like to think that I send out useful things for you to grow as an author. If you want it, go ahead, find the link in the show notes, or you can visit elenapage.com and you'll see it right there on the homepage, and get the Write Scenes Kids Love freebie that I've made for you today. Other than that, enjoy today's podcast and make a marketing plan at the end of it, or at the very least, sit down and write your book's core themes and values, and get your book some well-needed eyes on it. I think it was Ali, because there's Laurie and Ali. You'll hear them both in the interview. I'm pretty sure it was Ali that says that they give CPR to books that are just been wilting on the shelf, and I've got a lot of those books, so there's going to be a lot of CPR happening at my house, and perhaps a lot of CPR happening at your house. Enjoy today's interview. Welcome back to the Children's Book Author Podcast, and today we're talking all about, yes, it's your most feared and the most important word in the world, marketing. I am joined by two wonderful experts and best-selling award-winning children's book authors, so they know what they're talking about. Welcome to the show, Alysson Bourque and Laurie Orlinsky from Expound Publicity, a full-service book marketing agency. Do you like the way I added that in? Sounded like a commercial. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
There's so many amazing people out there. So tell me a bit about the process of, first of all, becoming children's book authors yourselves, and then what happened to get you to representing and helping other authors. Tell me a bit about that background and how you've ended up doing the wonderful work that you now do.
So my background is actually in marketing. I went to journalism school and I worked for a long time at some museums in Chicago and helped open some really cool exhibits with Pixar and Lego. And I was most recently the director of marketing at PBS in Chicago, which was amazing. But when my daughter, Haley, who's now 11, was about 2 years old, she came home from preschool one day crying. And I asked her what was wrong. And she told me they had done a growth chart activity at school where they basically measured the kids and put their names next to a piece of masking tape just to decorate the classroom. And it was completely harmless. And all of Haley's friends were at the top and the middle of the chart, and she was all the way at the bottom. And that is the first time she realized that she had something made her different. And I think her peers and her teachers did too. It wasn't bullying by any means, but they called her Shorty and they called her Peanut, and it hurt her. So, of course, I set out to find a book about short kids that would make her feel better. I went on Amazon, we went to Barnes & Noble, and we could not find anything. So, as I mentioned, I have a journalism background, and that night I went up and I wrote her a story. I read it to her. It was pretty choppy, and she loved it. And she was clapping for me, and she said, "Mommy, more." And I read it for a few of my friends and family, and everyone encouraged me to get it published. And it really caught on like wildfire. That book sold over 10,000 copies. And one thing that was really cool about that is it gave my daughter the confidence that she needed to move forward. And it gave other kids confidence too. They used the word short, and instead they subbed out what made them different, whether it's like wearing glasses or being tall or everything that they can use. So it was wonderful. And I saw the impact that could have. And so I just kept writing books based on experience I had in my family. I've written 3 more books, and those have been with a hybrid publisher. And since then, I've gotten my next book. It's actually the sequel to Being Small. It's being picked up by a traditional publisher.
What a great journey. Look, I think I was 45 when I had to line up at this class thing I was doing in height. And I went into the middle and they're like, oh no, oh no, oh no. And then when I was at the end of the line, I was like, surely I am not so I didn't even notice till I was 45 how short I was. So I can so relate to that. It's that shock of standing out and being unusual in some ways, or the last of something, or the first, the 2 extremes. If you're in the middle, you're kind of safe. Hey, you know.
Yeah, and it's funny, it came full circle this weekend. We were at an amusement park and it said you have to be shorter than 54 inches to ride this ride. And she was too tall this time because she couldn't ride with her sister. So it's funny how things come full circle.
Oh, but what a gorgeous way to get into writing. It's problem solving, which is ultimately probably what also led to the great success of your book, because even though you're entertaining kids, you're also solving a problem.
Yes, yes. And Allie's books I let her tell you about them, but they do the exact same thing.
Yeah, so I have a background in elementary education. I taught school for 1 year, but always wanted to go off to law school. And after watching Legally Blonde one night, I decided that I was going to get a Chihuahua, name it Bruiser, and go off to law school. So I did. And so, although my husband at the time got me the dog, it wasn't a Chihuahua, it was a toy fox terrier, but I still called it Bruiser, went off to law school. I graduated with my law degree and practiced law as assistant attorney general for the state of Louisiana. I did that for about 8 years. And then I decided to take a temporary retirement. My children were very young at the time. And so I took about what I thought was going to be 1 year off. And during that time, I started, reading them lots of books at bedtime, story time. And one night they wanted more books for their bookshelf and it was overflowing already. So I just told them I would write them a story. And because they believed that I could and they were excited, I believed that I could. And I always liked to write. I love to write poetry. I wrote trial briefs. So it was just the stepping stone into what became a now almost 10-year career in writing children's books. So I have the Alley Cat series and they're all problem solving lesson based books. And I will be releasing two more in 2025, a Christmas book and Alley Cat and the Copycat will come out. So that'll be 10 books in 10 years. And haven't gone back to practicing law yet because this is so much fun. Lori and I kind of got our business together in the pandemic when the world shut down. There wasn't a lot of ways to market yourself in a digital world. So we just kind of put our heads together and started helping each other. And we started a podcast called Ask an Author to get authors out there talking to teachers, talking to students that were in a digital virtual classroom about their books. And so we helped authors that way. And then one day an author asked if we could help with their marketing because they saw what we did for our own books and we agreed. And 4.5 years later, we've had over 500 authors that we've helped market their books and just loving being a part of their journeys.
And the really cool thing that people don't realize is Allie and I worked together for a full year before we met in person. So it was just so neat and so much fun. When you kind of click with somebody, you just know. And so we worked really well together and it was really fun. We went to New Orleans. We had a fun family weekend. And so we do something usually every summer.
Wow, that's so cool. So you're actually you're not in an office together. You're actually in completely different states.
Right. Luckily, we're both on Central Time.
Oh, well, that's a plus. Yeah, because I did actually look up US times before jumping on and I thought, hold on, why is there such a disparity between different states in the US? It's huge.
It is. It is. Luckily, we are both on Central Time. So,
well, Allie, I loved what you said. It was such a great line where you said, I loved writing poetry and I also wrote, what did you say, trial briefs. And I thought, wow. what a crack up, they are such different things. And then your kids giving you the confidence that, hey, if I can write that, I can write a kid's book. And you did. And now you've written several. What I want to ask is, you both wrote these amazing series, books that there's a need for them, kids love them. What was your first step just as an author? Now, I know obviously you both have an immense amount of knowledge and expertise that you've gained from your careers before becoming writers. But what was the first thing you did? Did you go, yay, I wrote a book and stick it on the shelf? Or did you actually do something to get it discovered and found? Because, I still hear from people, they'll discover my book, they will find it. And I think, will they? So talk to me a bit about the very first thing you did.
So for me, the first thing I did was research. And I was so used to researching with my law degree that I just wanted to find out the best way to have a successful series. I knew I wanted to write a series. And so I looked at what others did. There was Pete the Cat. I love the TV series Peppa Pig, and that's what my kids were watching at the time. And so I just found what worked with them and research everything from querying agents to submitting to independent publishers. That was the biggest part, and asking for help. And so things I couldn't figure out, I would go and ask authors and join different groups, children's book author groups, and collaborate with other authors to try to build that network to learn more.
And for me, my background is in writing. And so I write for a bunch of different I freelance for a bunch of different parent magazines across the country. And I thought the cool thing about my book was that I was living it and that other people were actually living it. Other kids were living it. They're feeling the same way. So I wrote a first person, very raw article about raising a child with differences. Now, of course, it was lighthearted in nature. It's not extreme differences, but it's a child that notices that they have differences. And I sent that article out to publications like Scary Mommy, to Today Show Parenting, and it just kept getting picked up. And the article, we call it content marketing, but the article really didn't promote the book. It just talked about my experience raising a child that was short. And in the bio, I had a buy link, and I wrote that, I just recently wrote this book, and people just kept clicking and clicking. And that's how I would say I got discovered, especially, being able to be on Scary Mommy. That stuff is great. Motherwell magazine. So I would tweak up the stories a little bit for every publication. But that for me, using my own writing skills was a way to get my foot in the door.
Both really important things. Hey, so researching and seeing what's out there, what resources, what groups, what other people that can, like maybe aligned with what you've written, and then content marketing. Let's talk a little bit more. Tell our audience, my audience, and your audience, what exactly is content marketing? Now, you did allude to, you wrote an article. Is that what we're supposed to do? Write an article and then send it to people? Like, how does it work?
So content marketing is really establishing yourself as an expert. And a lot of authors, whether it's an expert on, like me, raising a child with differences, bullying prevention, an expert in mindfulness, it's really becoming an expert on the theme of your book. Or sometimes you can write an article as an author being an expert about your book journey. But we encourage authors to lean into what makes them different thematically, and then find audiences that align. People love the personal connection and that personal story. So content marketing, I think, really works. We just recently worked with a client. He's a grandpa, and he wrote stories for his daughter 30 years ago, and just recently decided to get them published as a grandparent. And so he was sending us pictures of his grandkids and him. And we thought, wow, this would be a great article for Grandparents' Day. And we can actually send the article along with the photo. And so we helped him craft an article that was very simple. It was very tip-based. So it was like a quick read, a quick pickup. And it was how to foster a love of reading through grandparents and grandchildren with books. So we came up with different ways, and the article was picked up by more than a dozen parent magazines. And as a result, he's actually gotten interviews separately. So it led to TV interviews, it led to radio interviews. And when you Google his name, he almost becomes like an expert for Grandparents' Day. And SEO is very important. I'm sure you know, it's so hard to get up on the top of those Google pages. And so that's why the more authors can get out their names and be on other people's blogs and websites, it just helps your own credibility.
Makes so much sense. What I find is a lot of fiction authors in particular struggle to see themselves or the book they've written as any type of, expert. And, a lot of the time the advice that comes through, particularly to fiction writers, and now I don't know if it's the same in the US, but certainly in Australia, and we might have, really big differences I don't know. But it's, don't make your book have a lesson. Don't make your book be preachy, like just make it fun and an adventure and a fiction story. But the reason I'm saying all of that is bringing it back to, if let's say your book's just silly or, has nothing that you can really sort of pin that on, how does a fiction author then promote something in the way that you're describing, other than, saying this is, a story?
So what I would say is make yourself the expert of fun. Okay. So as a parent, you want story time to be fun. You want bedtime to be fun because you want to go to bed on a good note. And so find what makes you not different, but what are your attributes? What are the things that you are, like your titles? You're a mom. I was a lawyer, so I have problem solving. I could be an expert in that. But a mom or a dads are super silly sometimes. They're experts of fun. So you can be very creative with being an expert for content marketing.
Great answer. Yeah, great answer. And thank you. That's really interesting, isn't it? You said the dads are the fun. It's usually the male authors that go, stop putting lessons in your books, because they're often the fun people not always, not in my family. I'm fun. My husband's the non-fun, but it's good to have balance.
He's not listening to this. I would also say, just as you talk about fiction and how authors can get their names out there, sometimes it's even just, we really recommend starting local. Local is the key. You want to blanket your neighborhood. We have clients that were in a neighborhood magazine that only goes out to their gated communities. And from there, they build the recognition to their suburb. From there, they build it to their city and their region. And you grow from there. And so it's really, the news is just heavy nowadays. Everything is just very heavy. And so people love this hometown hero type of story. Authors are seen as hometown heroes. And so leaning into that as well is a great opportunity to get news if you don't really have an expert type angle.
Yeah, great advice. I do the exact opposite thing. So in Australia, I'm completely unknown. I don't even have a great deal of sales. But in the US, my books do really well. And they're actually edited in US English. I think that's the right terminology for that. So they're Chicago style, editing manual, I think it's called. But local, nothing. And it's funny because I'm actually doing the sort of opposite thing. And I think, do I need to go live in America if I'm marketing to America? But maybe because I grew up with American stories and American TV, I almost feel like my brain works more in storytelling there. If I read Australian things, I'm often like, meh. So, but I need to do local. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. That's really, really good advice.
Lean into what works for you. And that's the thing is, we always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're not going to just go out in a period of 2 weeks and blow up with your book. It takes multiple avenues. It takes time. And so that's part of the reason that Allie and I founded this company, because people just don't have time. When you're authors, you wear so many different hats. You're an editor. You oversee illustrations. You usually have to do your own type of marketing, just self-marketing in the beginning. You're your own social media manager. And so we wanted to do something to take that load off of authors' shoulders. And you would be surprised. So many authors have told us they're introverts. And so they want to put out this book, but they don't want to put themselves out. And that's often the hardest thing that we found for most authors. That's the biggest hindrance, is they're afraid to put themselves out there.
Yeah, that's so true. And also you've got that different person perspective, as you were saying, where you can see what sets the person apart, whereas they can't necessarily see it about themselves. And so they might be marketing themselves, not incorrectly, but kind of missing opportunities of how they're presenting themselves. So, yeah, I can really see the value in almost outsourcing that to get somebody, really get their brand a little cleaner and much sharper. Let's talk a little bit. There's this term that always goes around, which is build a platform. And, what does that actually really mean? You've probably covered some of that, But, what does it look like for an author to build a platform?
So I think building a platform is very multidimensional. So it's what is your reader base? Who are your readers? We think that that 3 to 8 year olds or my audience, they are, but the buyers are their parents. So my audience is parents of children 3 to 8 years old, and so also your brand, you want to have brand recognition in everything you do, whether your brand is you being an author and writer or part of a series. You want to make sure that that is constant and that they can be recognized for years to come. So that's why we do a customized approach with all of our authors. That way we can see how much they've done, where they're going, what their plans are. And sometimes they kind of get themselves into a hole of what they think that they should be doing because they see other authors doing it, but we see it differently. We see that marketing is like a wheel, and we want to hit all these spokes of the wheel for them, and their wheels can be different from other authors. So there's so many different, your fan base, your brand, there's so many different aspects of it. We try to tap into that.
And we also always tell authors, with that consistent brand, you want to have a website. You want a place that people can always land to go to your website, to be able to see where your socials are, where your press releases are. That's the most important thing to having a foundation as an author, is a website, followed probably by an Instagram account. Allie, would you agree?
Absolutely. So right now, of course, Instagrammers are really, big on books right now. And so they're, hashtag Bookstagram. And so there are so many ways to tap into those readers right now, whether it's virtual book tours, blog tours, social influencer tours, reviews, and there's so many different opportunities. And so if you establish that foundation in the social media world, that's very beneficial.
So should authors be reaching out to these different reviewers or tours? Should authors be actually, reaching out and saying, hey, here's me, here's my book?
So we actually, there are so many companies and people out there that unfortunately really prey upon authors, first-time authors in particular. And as soon as they see that you've put out a book, you'll get a message in your Instagram, and it's like, for $300, I will review your book. It'll go out to an audience of 6 million. So the first thing that we tell people is, look at that audience. How many likes are on there? If they're 1 like, then they're buying their followers. So it's really important to do your research and to make sure that anyone that you pay is legitimate, and that you can see the value in it. We only work with influencers that they don't take money. They take a product in exchange for an honest review. And so you're taking a bit of a gamble. That review is not going to always be 5-star, but it's real feedback. And I think that's what legitimizes authors today. It looks kind of strange when the author has glowing 5-star everything. We always say, welcome to the 0-star club sometimes, because it always happens to the best of us.
Yeah, the 0-star club, that's definitely like, you're starting to make it. I always say, if you have at least 1 0-star, it's really important. And yeah, such a good warning. Thank you. That's really such valuable advice for people, that there are so many people, isn't there, that do prey on that. And, like you end up sort of spending a whole lot of money on things. And, not all marketing leads to sales, but marketing still has to have some sort of outcome. Yeah. So do we still sort of reverse engineer that a little bit? Is that the process that you guys go through when you're actually planning somebody's campaign?
So we look at marketing as like a funnel. And so the top of the funnel, people are always at the top of the funnel. That's the awareness phase. So we want to drive them from the awareness phase to just knowing about your book. Oops, sorry. My phone wasn't off. I want to ask that question again, so it's easier.
Yeah. So like when you're getting your authors to run their campaign, do you reverse engineer it, like in terms of them getting some sort of outcome, not just necessarily sort of throwing a whole bunch of things out? And you started talking about funnels, which is great. Yeah. Tell me more.
We always tell authors to look at the marketing funnel. So if you think about it as a triangle, the very top of the funnel is awareness. You want people to know about your book. You want people to know that it exists. And as you market and as you do the right things, you're moving people from awareness to consideration. So then they know about your book, they're considering purchasing it, and then you're hopefully hitting those right tactics to bring them right down to the intent to purchase. So it's like you're getting them to the mall, you're getting them in a store, you're touching the shirt. And so at that point, your book's job is to make the sale. And say it involves a variety of factors. Sales are a personal preference. It's the book cover, it's the price, it's the length of the book, etc. So marketing leads to exposure, and you are targeting the right people. Marketing, unfortunately, you can never connect the dots with sales. There are things you can do with Amazon ads. Amazon ads are extremely costly. You have to put in thousands of dollars to see the return and to get key learnings about your books. And so it hinders a lot of authors. And so that's why we work with them to find their target audience.
So target audience. Now, like there's that thing that everyone does, which goes, my target audience is every single kid between ages, and that's sort of true. But at the same time, is it not like the more we sort of niche that, the better we can find those people? So, how does that process work?
Absolutely. So just recently, after almost 10 years, I've discovered that more girls like my books than boys. And, that was hard for me because that cuts it in half, 50%. And so, I always knew that, but I had to actually realize that. And so once I realized that, then I can actually market to different types of events, like things that girls would go to versus boys. And I that's how you find your target audience. You have to really narrow it to what, their likes and don't likes are. I do have books that have some, boy themes in it. And, but still most of my sales are the girls who want to read books about cats who are having a sleepover or making dessert. So you have to really do almost like a chart and see who your buyer is. And so over the years, I finally just acknowledged that, which was hard for me.
And for me, with being small, initially I thought, well, everyone's going to love this book because you can sub yourself for different, tall, short, as I mentioned. But then I started thinking, okay, who would be the perfect target for this book? And I thought about pediatric endocrinologists. Kids are constantly in the endocrinology offices because they're short, and they talk about, they do different testing. They might do growth hormones. And so this is a perfect book, I thought, to be sitting in the waiting room to just reassure kids that they're perfect the way they are. And so I took that route. In addition to going mainstream, I started contacting local doctors' offices. And then I went from there and I contacted like the university health systems. And so we do all of that with our clients and really help them find those audiences, because we have a tendency to just think in one small spoke of that wheel. And by having somebody else touch your book, to look at your book, it gives you a whole different outlook on your audience. And so it just opens up a world of opportunities. And so I actually was invited to speak at a conference in a pediatric endocrinology about my book, which is something that I never thought that I would do. So you really become the expert on all things your book, and you notice that target audiences may change, that when you thought you were writing your book, it may be somebody totally different, and you have to accept it and be open to it.
Yeah, good point. You might have not had that in mind when you actually wrote it, but
right.
then you start to discover little niches. And like I always have this thing in my head, which is, don't just look at the demographics, look at the psychographics. Who is the reader of that book? Really, who's the reader of that book? Are they feeling, like they don't like themselves, or that, like you said, they're hanging out at the doctor's office, actually going through this real life event about their current growth, or they, love cats to death. And any book with a cat on it, they're going and making desserts. Yeah, I love that. Thank you, Ellie. The reality, that's who goes, oh, I really want to read that. In the neighborhood, it's really funny. People are like, oh, do you write books? Like, I'll get that for my child or whatever, right? And I go, do they like books about that? And they're like, no, but I'll get it anyway. And I think, well,
We're seeing so many evergreen books. Of course, we see those like wonderful holiday books, but they have like a smaller shelf life. Really, Christmas books, October to December, that's it. Of course, you can do Christmas in July, but we're seeing a lot of themes that could be used year round. SEL is a big one, different types of awareness. We're seeing different religion, inclusion. There are so many opportunities to be able to find people that relate to that specific some thematic element. And also, there are different holidays. So there's a holiday for everything out there. I was not kidding. Allie and I were talking about it because I serendipitously launched my Being Small book on the shortest day of the year on December 21st. And so I said to Allie, like, there's probably a holiday for everything. And she happened to see a squirrel outside. And I'm like, I bet there's a National Squirrel Day. And there is. So it's also leaning into some of that fun stuff and helping authors. Sometimes we see a lot of environmental stories. So leaning into Earth Day, things like that. We really encourage authors to kind of have fun and lean into news and timely events.
Yeah, great advice. I also run into the problem myself personally that, when I had one series, I felt that it was quite easy to really, focus on it, to be about that, to get out and about talking about that series. And then, and then I finished that series and there's sort of a sense of, oh, that's done. And then the next one starts and I do that. Now I've got 6 series and wow. I actually feel a little like my marketing's gotten way worse than it was when I only had 1 or 2 because how do I talk about these and particularly fiction books because they are evergreen, you nailed it. They could be, even a Christmas book, but fiction books can sell in 10 years' time. They could become big, even if they're not big today. They might suddenly take off. They never run out of life necessarily. So how do you, and I'm actually picking your brains now as marketing experts, I'm getting free advice like I always do on this podcast, and hopefully someone else can benefit from it too. How does someone like me, actually market different things and keep fresh around it? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I have I guess I like charts. So I have a chart of those days like Lori was talking about national holidays. So there's a National Cookie Day, there's a National Golf Day. And so I try to make sure that I kind of spread the wealth with all of the books because they all are, new to a new reader that has just seen the series, even if I released it 8, 9 years ago. And so I try to spread the wealth with them, tap into those national holidays, look for things like Valentine's Day. I collaborated with Whole Foods. We have a Whole Foods market here, and we did a Alley Cat Valentine's party. And so it was like a scavenger hunt. So just being very creative. It's golf season now, and I have a golf book. So I, bring it to all of our golf tournaments. I collaborate with different professional golfers at their tournaments and do giveaways there. And so just finding very, very specific ways with each one of those books and kind of spreading the wealth with them.
And also paying attention to what's in the news. I am a news watcher. I look at headlines all the time. Sometimes you might see something that'll spark a connection with your book. I saw something, there was a bullying article, a bullying prevention one on Huffington Post, and they were talking about gentle thought starters to get conversations going about bullying. And I noticed that they just missed reading books. Like it was something that should have been in there, but it wasn't. They talked about role playing. They talked about all these things to start conversations, but they missed books. And so I emailed the reporter and I said, hey, I'm a bullying, I wrote a bullying book. I'm a bullying prevention expert because I had gotten certification. Are you interested in doing a follow-up story? And they did. So we're always on top of the news. We encourage our clients to always be on top of the news. You never know what they'll be talking about where you can insert yourself in that conversation. So Don't let your book die by just putting it to bed and moving it to the next one. Be aware and alert of what's going on in the world. And you can always find a connection. It's actually a really fun, mind-boggling exercise.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Really coming back to focus on the themes and the topics. And what I love, what I'm really hearing so strongly is, it's really collaborative. It's not you going like, I wrote a book. It's actually saying, this book matches the thing that you do, I love that. It's sort of, it makes it a little less, not threatening, but perhaps just makes it a little less just about the individual. It's really about solving problems or talking about topics. Yeah,
exactly.
Really good advice.
What value does an author's book add to the audience? And there are so many values. We really encourage all authors to take the time and map out those target audiences, map out the themes. There might be themes in the book that you didn't know are in there. So we encourage authors to do that, to take the time, and you never know what you're going to find. And it kind of gives you a fresh perspective and a jumpstart. We joke that we help authors with book CPR. We should trademark that phrase, but really some authors think their books are dead in the water after 3 months, after 3 years. And so we really help them jumpstart and bring life back into that book because it exists for a reason. And there's always going to be a niche audience for that.
Yeah,
and you also mentioned collaboration, which is the key to marketing. And so Lori and I like to partner our clients with different organizations. So we just had a book about ostriches and how they got their long arms and long necks. And so we have him partnered with the San Francisco Zoo, the Ostrich Conservation Project. And so he's been doing signings by the ostrich area, getting great content, great marketing. Just it is so much fun. It's thinking outside the box. So pulling something from that book, seeing who you can partner with, and kind of just, creating that whole realm of your theme.
Yeah, I love that.
That too, you're not just reaching, the San Francisco Zoo, you're tapping into their entire audience of thousands and thousands of people, and they all have kids, they all have people that like books. And so it's just creating the perfect match and also creating opportunities down the road for future partnerships. We try and find nonprofit or charity partners with all of our clients because it's just such a unique way to give back sometimes, whether you're donating a few books, whether you're donating a portion of proceeds or donating your time. That in itself is newsworthy as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you're looking for partners. Yeah, I love that. And, that's the difference to, I see sometimes authors, they publish something, they, contact the local bookstore, they turn up at the local bookstore, they set up their lovely, thing, people walk right past and they feel so disheartened. They're like, oh, nobody must like my book. Oh, it mustn't be a very good book. But it's a bit like what you said. If you just propped yourself in the middle of the city with the stand, it's not necessarily talking to a specific audience. Whereas if you set yourself up I love what you said, thinking about some of your themes and some of the partners where they want you to sell your book as much as you want to sell your book because their audience is sort of similar. It's really, really, really valuable advice.
And for sure, authors should not get discouraged. Allie and I ourselves have told people where the bathroom was at our book signing events, and be part of being an author too, being able to have the perseverance to take that criticism, to take the feedback, and to also understand this might not be my day in terms of sales, but look how many people have passed by me and that may be looking for a book down the road and may think about that as a gift or may stop by and say, I've seen their name. So it's very easy to get discouraged at those types of events. Even I've read like J.K. Rowling, her first year or two, people would just pass by her books. Same with Emily Giffin and some pretty famous authors. And it just, it takes time, but we've all been there.
Great advice. Well, ladies, it has been fantastic talking to you both. I do feel like I got a lot of free advice. Thank you so much. Tell me, if people want to work with you, or even a different, publicity, person, if they might want to go with a local person, whatever. What's the first approach? How do they approach somebody like you? Do they say, like, here's my book, would you represent it? Or what's the process look like?
So for us, they can sign up on our website, expoundpublicity.com, and sign up for a consultation. And so our consultation allows us to get to know the author and their goals, because all of our campaigns are customized. And so that would be a recommended first step, is to find a PR firm that has your same goals and knows that where you want to go with this book and what your expectations are. And of course, we always say any PR firm that promises you sales, run away. We will promise you exposure. We cannot promise sales. So we're very, very honest. And so anybody can find us on expoundpublicity.com and set up a consultation. We would love to talk to them.
And we've been really lucky to be able to run our whole business by word of mouth, entirely word of mouth. So that's been wonderful, because it means people are happy. And, we want to make sure we also just truly care about our clients. We are authors ourselves. We were first-time authors. And so we've been in those shoes. We've been in the shoes of people that have released 2 books and this first one stopped selling. So we understand and we feel all the feels, and we're excited when our clients get wins, and we're disappointed when they have a bad day at a book signing. But it's about, working together and finding the right approaches. And we really care. And I would say find a PR firm that is not only a good fit for your book, but a good fit for you as a person.
Such good advice. So everyone's going to go get PR firms today after watching this podcast, I'm sure of it. Yeah, I've always been a bit intimidated by it, to be honest. And yeah, because a lot of people do say they'll get you sales. The people that, land in my inbox are like, join the thing, we'll get sales. So that was, really clarifying that, you're aiming for exposure. And look, it's the same thing with advertising. When there's an advertising course or something, they shouldn't be promising you, like massive amounts of income or return or whatever. People have to see you 7 times. Isn't that the rule before they'll even buy from you? But over a long period of time, that really slowly starts to build and build and build. And as you said, a few times throughout this interview, it's a long game. And I love that you also said several times, it's never too late to start marketing your book. Or I'm going to put that on a little sticky note, to bring your books back to life. Yes, so good. Well, thank you, ladies. All the links will be in the show notes. And, if you want a great PR firm, there they are. You've met them now on the show, and you've heard some of the things they've done for their clients. I've learned so much from having you on the show today. Are there any parting words of wisdom for the audience?
I guess I would say it's never too late to market your book or take your book off the shelf, go out there and get exposure for it, because that is your book, baby. That was your journey, and it can continue.
And don't worry if you're introverted or if you're shy in any way, your book is going to do the talking for you. And it's about getting your book to the place where it can do the talking. And so we will help you get there.
Genius. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you find that interview valuable? Great! Now be an awesome human and go and leave a review, because it helps the podcast out so much. Want to read the show notes? Check out thechildren'sbookauthorpodcast.com. Want to find out more about me, Eleanor Page? Find me at eleanorpage.com, or come and say hello on social at Eleanor Page Books. Until next time, keep writing and keep learning.